From the savannah to the Midland and the Atlantic, Ambazonia has risen to fall no more. Ambazonia rise.
Dear Ambazonians on the home front and diaspora.
Dear Ambazonia freedom fighters in the home front and in the diaspora.
The Ethics Commission of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is coming out to alert you that it is becoming more and more evident that the former British Southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonians, will soon emerge as the newest nation in the world.
We are calling on all of us to start preparing to receive Ambazonia as parents prepare to receive their firstborn child. Malcolm X said, tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. We are already very educated, talented, and very rich in natural resources. Do all this guarantee a safe and prosperous Ambazonia? The answer is an emphatic no. Theodore Roosevelt said, to educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace in society.
Ambazonians, it is time to start planning to restore our cultural and social values that characterize us as a people of good repute. Before our Republic to Cameroon invasion, we were respectful of each other, of the law, and of our culture. We earned our living through honest hard work, making clean money for ourselves.
Our values helped us to maximize the benefits of our natural resources as well as our human resources. Southern Cameroons were serene and clean, simply beautiful in spirit and in the physical. We all long for such a place to call home, and we can make it happen by God's grace.
Our local government areas and counties, are you preparing? Do you have an ethics commission in your local government areas, counties to serve as a moral compass for you? Do you have a copy of the Ambazonia Ethics Code and the Constitution?
All arms of government, do you have an ethics agency? Departments of DSS, HSS, Communications and IT, Education, DHACM, DFA and DEINR. Do you have ethics agency to serve as a moral compass for your departments?
Ambazonians, you need to know your rights by reading the Ethics Code and the Constitution.
Shame unethical behavior and reward good behavior in your communities. Hold leaders accountable. Be the watchdog of your communities and governments. See something, say something.
The church, you are the main research center of moral principles with the responsibility of moralizing the society. How effective are you outside the church building?
Maya Angelou said, when you know better, then you do better. Ambazonians, watch ethics for an emerging Ambazonia every Friday at 4 p.m. Amba time.
Exclusively on ABC Amba TV. Stay tuned.
Hello, greeting.
From the savannah to the Midland
Hello,
and the Atlantic, Ambazonia
greetings
has
and
risen
welcome to
to fall
our
no more. Ambazonia rise.
Hello, greetings and welcome to our program Ethics for an Emerging Nation. We want to greet all of you at home front, particularly, and those of you in the diaspora who listening to us at this moment, and you are the future Ambazonia that we are building, reflecting to the old Ambazonia before the
today. We are already very
From the savannah to the Midland and the Atlantic.
Studio, have you given me the microphone? All right, thank you very much. Once again, to our program on ethics in the Ambazonian quest for our homeland. And I want to welcome the panelists that are here today before we kick off with the subject matter that we have. And so it is my pleasure to present to you the two gentlemen who are here with us in the panel. And as I always say, these are seasoned, honest, well-groomed, and civilized Ambazonians, and they are of age. I will hand over the microphone for each of them to introduce themselves. I'll start with the SOS for communication, our boss, who is right inside here. The microphone is yours, sir.
Thank you, Komando. Can you hear me?
5 on
Can you?
5.
Okay. Uh, I find it always very difficult to introduce myself, and but it's a privilege for me to be part of your program today. I don't think I'm bragging to say that at this time, many Ambazonians know me, so I don't think I need that much to talk about. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you all know um, I'm an engineer. I'm a licensed professional engineer here in the United States, um, uh, and I'm legally allowed to practice in 3 states: New York, New Jersey, and Oregon. And these are places I was able I worked in. I mean this state, so I'm licensed to practice there. I'm also a certified project manager, so I have a PMP license. Um, and I have an MBA in general management with a minor in accounting, and I'm a fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers for my contribution to uh, critical electrical transmission engineering, which simply means I work with the utilities. As many people know, the utility is a very complex industry that provides power to sustain our economy. And so there are lots of ethics issues because we deal with a lot of chemicals and dielectric fluid and so on and so forth, and they can pose a great danger to the environment. And so today we are going to talk about environmental ethics, and I would like to chip in on the aspects of things that will be specific to Ambazonia. That's all I have to say. Over to you.
Hello, fellow Ambazonians. Thank you, Pastor Komando. Good afternoon, good evening, good day, fellow Ambazonians. Wherever you are, a shout out to our brave and selfless Ambazonian Restoration Forces who are putting their lives on the line to defend homeland and themselves and to ensure that we kick out the brutal occupiers and killers out of our territory, out of our God-given territory. I'm Tom Dula, the Vice Chair of the Ethics Commission of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. Come from Babisi LGA in Gokutunja County, where there is much action at the moment. We are proud of our ARFs in Gokutunja, Bui, and all over Ambazonia. Continue doing the good work you are doing and stay safe so that we see all of you in Boya. So,
Thank you very much, Dr. Tom. Like he has actually mentioned, Dr. Tom is the Vice Chair of Ethics for Ambazonia, and we are very glad these two gentlemen are here just to give you what you will need to know and hear. Before we kick off, I want to say that this year, Ethics for an Emerging Ambazonia will be coming on every Friday, on every other Friday, spotlighting on ethical issues plaguing Ambazonia at home and abroad. And we have a deep tone that says, see something, say something. The more Ambazonians engage in discussions on ethical issues, now the better our chances for a short transition period post recognition. Applied knowledge is power. We are acquiring knowledge during this wartime, and we have had 2 episodes on land grabbing on this particular in this particular department of Ethics Commission, the Amazonian people. And today we'll talk about the importance of environmental ethics. Now, the environmental ethics, we have the 2 guests in the house that will talk elaborately to us on environmental ethics. And please get ready, invite your friends. Our telephone line is open. You can call in to ask your questions, and they will be able to give you very plausible answers. So we take on the SOS for communication to go ahead and talk to us about the environmental ethics.
Okay.
Over to you,
Thank
sir.
you. Yeah, thank you, Komando. And thanks, Dr. Ndula, for the great work you've been doing to sustain this program. I think I've learned a lot from listening to you. One of the things that will be very different in our new country is that we are going to apply professionalism in every aspect of our daily lives. You realize that one of the ways that you can make sure that ethics takes hold in our community or in our society is to make sure that all professionals, everybody, whether you're a pharmacist or you're an accountant or you're a bookkeeper, whatever profession, they are going to have their societies, and you cannot practice in Ambazonia if you have not been admitted in that society. And it is through these channels that we'll be able to educate our communities on ethics. Because just listen to me, it's a very simple thing. In order to break ethical values, normally as in our environment, you may have businesses. We will obviously be working with people from the outside, and if our people are not well educated on ethics, people from outside can really take advantage of us, and we'll actually maybe breaking ethical issues without knowing. So it is not just talking about some of the things that happen, but we also have to talk about how are we going to eradicate it. and creating professional societies, engineers, architects, surveyors to have their societies. Through these societies, we are going to make sure that they all abide by ethical rules. And that's why in the United States, or probably in England, there's absolutely no profession without a core society. And you must belong to this society before you can practice. It's not just a matter of having a degree from a university. No, it goes beyond that. And as a licensed professional engineer in the United States, I have to pass an ethics exam. As a licensed financial expert, I have to pass an ethics exam because there are all sorts of ways that people can break ethical rules. So now, having said that, let me read to you what I have prepared for you on ethics and the environment in Ambazonia. First of all, what is environmental ethics? Environmental ethics is the study of the conceptual foundations of environmental values, as well as more concrete issues surrounding societal attitudes, actions, and policies to protect and sustain biodiversity and ecological systems. Ethics and the environment are of critical importance as the country is home to a diverse range of ecosystems, natural resources, and biodiversity. Ambazonia is known for its rich rainforests. Korup is one of the oldest rainforests in the world after Amazon, which is home to a variety or a wide range of species, including gorillas, chimpanzees, and elephants. At the same time, Ambazonia faces a range of environmental challenges, including deforestation, poaching, and pollution. One of the key ethical challenges facing Ambazonia is the need to balance economic development with environmental sustainability. Rapidly and increasing economic growth is often accompanied by increased environmental degradation. This raises questions about whether economic development should be prioritized over environmental protection and how best to achieve sustainable development in the country. Economic growth and sustainable development must therefore be reconciled to create a balance between the exploitation of resources and the need to meet economic demands of a community. Another important ethical issue in relation to the environment in Amazonia is the need to ensure that environmental policies and programs are inclusive and equitable. This means considering the needs and interests of marginalized communities who are often disproportionately affected by environmental degradation. It also means ensuring that environmental policies and programs are accessible to all, regardless of their socio-economic status or other characteristics. There are also important ethical questions related to the treatment of non human animals and the protection of biodiversity in Ambazonia. Many species in Ambazonia are endangered, and there is a growing recognition of the need to protect these species from extinction. This requires balancing the needs of humans with the needs of other species and considering the long term impacts of our actions on the environment. Climate change is another urgent ethical challenge facing Ambazonia. The country is particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, including droughts, floods, and sea level rise. At the same time, Amazonia has contributed relatively little to the greenhouse gas emissions that are driving climate change. This raises questions about fairness and responsibility and about the need for developed countries to support Amazonia in addressing the impacts of climate change. In order to address these ethical challenges, there is a need for greater dialogue and collaboration between the government, civil society, and other stakeholders in Amazonia. This requires a commitment to transparency, inclusivity, and accountability, as well as a willingness to engage with diverse perspectives and worldviews. By working together to develop ethical and sustainable approaches to the environment, Amazonia can ensure that its natural resources and biodiversity are protected for future generations. This includes reducing deforestation, promoting sustainable agriculture, supporting renewable energy, and taking action to address the impacts of climate change. By doing so, Ambazonia can serve as a leader in environmental ethics in Africa and beyond. So let's talk about, transportation, energy, ecosystems, and biodiversity. Let's talk about transformational energy because this is actually at the core of every economic challenge. Foreign companies operating in Amazonia have been accused of various environmental abuses, including deforestation, pollution of waterways, and destruction of flora and fauna. These companies have been involved in indiscriminate logging of trees without any regard for the environmental or local communities. The logging activities have resulted in soil erosion, loss of habitat for wildlife, and a significant reduction in biodiversity. The oil and gas exploration in Ambazonia, specifically in Bakassi Peninsula, has caused severe environmental damage. Oil spills and leaks have contaminated water sources, leading to the death of fish and other aquatic animals. This pollution has also affected the health of local communities, leading to respiratory and skin diseases. Some foreign companies have also been accused of dumping toxic waste in Ambazonia's waterways, leading to environmental pollution and health hazards for the residents. This toxic waste has resulted in contaminated soil, water, and air with long term effects on the environment and human health. The foreign companies operating in Ambazonia have mostly neglected their social responsibilities towards the local communities, resulting in widespread poverty, inequality, and underdevelopment. The avenues or the revenue, sorry, from the exploitation of natural resources do not benefit the local communities, and access to basic services like healthcare and education is often limited. In conclusion, the environmental abuses of foreign companies in Ambazonia have had severe consequences on the environment and the lives of local communities. The exploitation of natural resources must be done sustainably with responsible corporate practices that benefit both the environment and the local communities. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Doc. I'm sure that Ambazonians are listening, and we are going to get experts and get people who merit whatever we are going to do with our environment. And we are glad that many of us in the diaspora, we are not just sitting idle and running behind what we are running. We are making studies both theoretically and practically to get into Ambazonia and make Ambazonia an environment very, very friendly. We'll cross over to listen to Dr. Tom, then before we have some questions to fire in while we ask those of you back at home who are listening, please pick up the phone number, use your WhatsApp to call, and also you can send a text message through that number and text questions. We'll read it if you cannot call, and we'll go from there. Okay, Dr. Tom, the microphone is yours. You can now go ahead. Oh boy.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, we can
Komando.
hear you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mungwa, for that wonderful presentation there. I knew it. You talked as if you knew what talking points we had discussed in our last ethics meeting on this subject. I won't have like much to add onto it. Well, the Ethics Commission is there to ensure transparency, accountability, and harmonization and compliance to the rules, to the laws of Ambazonia through educating people on the Constitution and on the Code of ethical conduct of Ambazonia. And one very important element of this that many people neglect is ethics of the environment. I think we should leave those sayings behind that we are used to hearing back home. Black man no dey die dirty. Yes, black man dey die dirty. And it is especially in that respect that when we talk about environmental ethics, that when how people do their things, it should be ethical, especially how they treat the environment. We know that treating the environment in a friendly manner, in a sustainable manner, starts at home, in your four walls, in your compound, in your village. Back in the days in Ambazonia, we are not just talking about all these things, wanting to implement them from the blue. We know in La République, it is, I mean, there is lawlessness, there is the survival of the fittest, survival of the rich, the powerful. We talked about land grabbing last time. You saw how all those elements come into it with corruption and everything. It will be different in Ambazonia. We are not creating anything new. We are just wanting to reinstate what was happening in Ambaland 60 years ago under Dr. John Ngufoncha, first Prime Minister, our second Prime Minister, our first Prime Minister, Dr. Endele, and Joa, and all the others. The environment was really taken care of, starting from home. There were the sanitary prefects who were very much feared. I mean, in form of being respected because they took no bribes. They were consistent and they were strict. I mean, sanitation has to start at home with how you dig your pit toilets, and if at all there is a toilet at your home, and how that has to be separate from where people live, and how wells are to be dug, and how we bury the dead, where and how, so as not to affect the environment. So those things are to be reinstated in our Ambazonia of tomorrow. We had discussion points last time. We talked about environmental ethics, that it benefits everybody. So when you start at home, then it is easy. You take it to your quarter, to your village, and at the town level, and then at the national level. Then people will already be versed with that. So environmental ethics is very important to everyone, and local councils should be empowered to implement laws on hygiene and sanitation instead of decrees from the presidency. Well, when we talk of decrees from presidency, we talk of La République. That's a system we've been unhappily married to for the past 60 years. But since 1st October 2017, under our former president, Julius Ayub Tabe, our independence was restored, and those things, they don't affect us anymore, at least us in the diaspora. Our brothers and sisters back home, they still have to bear the brunt of that evil system. So we have no presidential decrees. We have laws in Ambazonia that are followed from the least to the topmost person in the country. There is the need to hold violators accountable. That would mean the government has to enact laws which apply to everybody, not just the poor or the unprivileged, but to everybody. And no one should be above the law. Corruption should be stopped. In Ambazonia in southern Cameroons at the time, stealing 100 colonial French francs or 10 shillings or whatever the least amount, taking it from government coffers, was considered a big crime. And an example was such people would be called out and shamed and will be punished. It's not the amount of money that matters, but the fact that you misappropriate public funds. So they were strict on that, and that's how in our Amazonia of tomorrow we'll be very strict on that also. And last, an environment ethically managed will attract quality investors, and people will live longer, more productive lives. So that's what we talked about for our Ambazonia of tomorrow. But we see our Ambazonia of today, where daily our people have bullets flying around their heads and being killed, maimed, and raped. And for some of them, it might be difficult to imagine that things will ever be different in the future. But we are here to inform them. We are under our able president, President Samuel Ikome Sako. This government is undertaking steps and has achieved much in the diplomatic sphere, in international recognition of our plight and of our struggle, and much has been gained, and we are at the farthest point we've ever been since 1961 to becoming truly independent. We have laws, we have departments, we have a constitution that is being followed, we have curriculums, school curriculums from nursery school to university. And in the words of our former president, Julius Ayuk, we will hit the ground running when we enter Ambazonia as the 55th nation, independent nation in Africa. So rest assured, we are not just here blowing hot air or talking about things that might be. We are absolutely certain that this will happen in our lifetime, that we will have an independent Ambazonia. So all the worries or the troubles you are going through daily, seeing your friends die left and right, especially our Ambazonia Restoration Forces, stay safe, keep your head up high, know our independence is coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tom. I will cross over to the SOS and ask this very pertinent question. And I believe that the task is, I can already see him smiling because he knows the answer, because it's dealing with environment. SOS, when I was looking into the introduction, we said, see something, say something. Now, in the environmental ethics that we are talking about, can you tell us, is it going to be just the experts on environment and some of the people of the government, or every Ambazonia is going to be involved in this environmental ethics?
Thank you so much, Pastor Komando. You've just taken up from where I wanted to start. And the reason being, I wanted to make sure that when I talk again, I have to go into specifics. I think I was a little bit general when I talked to you for obvious reasons, because if I start talking in details, then we may not really understand what the whole concept is about. Remember, in my first statement, I said societal attitudes, actions, and policies to protect and sustain biodiversity and ecological systems. These are societal, which it means that it belongs to everybody is responsible. I'm going to take specific examples now so that you understand what I'm talking about. First, the first example is Bambaland. That is my village. You all know that in Bambaland, they talk about Bambaland fish. We harvest this fish, and I think throughout Ambazonia, we've been noted for producing this freshwater fish. The question is there an ethical issue related to the harvesting of fish? And if there is, who is responsible? Who is going to enact it? And how are we going to follow up? The answer is yes, there is an ethical issue. And what is it? In order to sustain the fishing or the harvesting of fish in Bambaland, we should make sure that not all fish, not all the fish that we harvest should be eaten. Because if you harvest everything over a certain period of time, there will be some species that will go extinct. So, how do we make sure that over the years we are going to have the same quality and type of fish in order to feed Ambazonia? Now, this will rest not only with legislation, but with individuals, all those fishermen. They should know that when they go and harvest fish, the little ones, they should put them back into the water. They should not kill them, or they should not just throw them at the, along the way so that they die. Because we are killing the mothers of future fish. That is an ethic issue. Each individual, if you see a fisherman harvesting fish and throwing away the little ones on dry land for them to die, that is a crime. In other words, you are not helping to create more fish population in the water. Even here in Western countries, when they harvest fish, by law, there are certain sizes that have to be put back in the water. You don't kill them. You cannot be killing your children. So that is number one example of an ethical issue which involves everybody, which means that from the young fishermen to those in the elders in the village, they should be aware of this. And it is the responsibility of everybody to enforce this law. Otherwise, I can assure you, in the very near future, you will not be able to have the quantity of fish that we have now. And maybe they already started seeing the change. I won't be surprised. And those who use chemicals to kill fish in order to harvest a large sum, that is a capital crime. That should not be allowed to happen. And I know when I was a little boy, there was a time when they used gamalin, I think it was a chemical substance or pesticide, whatever, to harvest fish. And even people who ate the fish, they were sick. So these are issues of ethical concern that involves the entire society. Number two, you take the case of mining. We know that they mine gold in Ambazonia. And one of the critical materials that are important in the mining of gold is mercury. Mercury has to be heated and poured for it to coagulate the gold for it to be harvested. But mercury is a very poisonous chemical. You inhale it, you are going to suffer from all sorts of immune issues. And how do we make sure that when we do mining, it may not only be gold. There is no mining where you don't use some other type of material that can lead to health hazards. How do we control it to make sure that the environment is not contaminated? When mercury goes into the environment, and other mothers or babies, they inhale or they eat this mercury or ingest, that's the right word, it can lead to major health hazards. So that is another example of environmental ethics that we, the professionals, so those professionals who will be dealing with mining, they should be aware of this. And that's why I talked about all the professions having their society so that they can be guided on how to act when it's for the public good. You take it, example number three. We know that Western countries actually produce a lot of waste. And there are times where they take this waste, they will call an African head of state or some influential person in government and say, oh, we have this cargo here. If you allow us to come and bury it in your country, we are going to give you several millions. Of course, that's a moral issue. And because it's money, the man say, oh, I don't care. I mean, I'm going to have my money. They take it, they go to an unsuspecting village. And you see people will come and they dig holes and they bury the things in there, not knowing that it's going to contaminate groundwater. So what are we going to do? That's an ethical issue too. So it's not just our villagers, it's also those in government, those who wield power. because they can be bought. And this is very important. In 1972, President Nixon brought about the EPA. Okay. And they enacted what they call the Clean Water Act of 1972. And that gave birth to the EPA, Environmental Protection Energy Agency, which we all know about. So the Clean Water Act, in fact, my job is to make sure that the company I work for, I make sure the water in our community is clean. So I'm involved in what they call spills prevention, controls, and countermeasures. If there's any incident of a spill as a result of some chemical, especially in my case is oil, like oil that contains PCB. It is very important that we act in a way that it doesn't go into the drinking water. Or if you have an oil spill, like in Victoria, that oil spill is going to prevent oxygen from going to the water, and the fish will die. These are all environmental issues, and it is our responsibility to make sure that the water is clean. So these are some of the examples that I thought I should discuss it with our people to know that no matter how much we develop, if water and sanitation cannot be guaranteed, therefore our health is at risk. Okay, water and sanitation is very important. Waste disposal and drinking water sources. We must have a water act in Ambazonia to make sure that anybody, whatever activity that leads into discharging polluted substance into our water, whoever is involved in it will pay heavily. And that's why we'll have standards of PMP, parts per million, which is allowable for you to discharge water into wastewater into our streams. So we will call upon our chemical engineers, upon our chemists and our biologists to make sure that all these measures are put into place so that everybody or any industrialist knows the water quality, what are the standards that must be followed in order to operate in our country. You must have known that since independence, most of the industries are built along the coast. It's for a very simple reason. That waste is simply poured into the ocean and nobody knows about it. They don't want to go inland because when they go inland, now they have the challenge of creating treatment facilities to make sure that that water is treated before it is poured into our streams. So these are some of the issues that I want Ambazonians to understand, that environmental ethics involves all of us. It's not just those in government, it's not just so-called the civil servants or the businessmen, it is everybody. And the last point I would like to talk about, you realize that you ask yourself, why is it that if you go to a forested area, people build using concrete, steel, and stones? It doesn't make sense. It is not sustainable. We're talking about sustainability. Why can't our engineers go into a way that we can use the local materials in a very rational manner and teach them how to use it in a way that will be profitable? Whether it is building in stone, like in our part of the country, in the savannah areas, or you can build using wood, well-treated wood, harvested and preserved, and to ensure that any form of deforestation is properly managed. If I mean, I work for the wood industry. I may say so. My first job was in the wood industry, where I was the director of the research lab in Oregon, where we were working on, wood, what we call particle-based and tree-free and wood-based materials. Okay, so I could understand how forests were sustainably run, and they cut the trees and they regrow them, and you have all these machines that make sure that the forests do not just disappear and erosion takes over. So I was able to see, how forests are managed. So I'm well aware of how we can do the same in Ambazonia. Over to you.
Thank you very much, SOS. This is very educative. And that's why we call Ambazonians to come around when we have seasoned men of today giving us knowledge in preparation for tomorrow. While you take your breath, I will want to cross over to Dr. Tom and then find out this particular question, which is very, very important. Reading through our introduction today, Dr. Tom, we discovered that we say applied knowledge is power. But in the course of your enumerating a number of things, you mentioned something that was very, very intriguing and very, very important. And that was black man no dey die dirty. So, Dr. Tom, going to what the SOS has just explained concerning the environmental pollution and other things like that, and taking into consideration this environment in which we are living today, can that saying still be relevant that black man no dey die dirty?
Of course not. The saying is not really relevant. I mean, it could be understood in the sense of we are more resistant, and we are our immune system is stronger than that of others elsewhere. I used to remember when we were small, our late grandmother used to tell us, when you go to some place new, to a totally new environment, so to prevent certain diseases, you take up some soil, just some earth, and then you chew it and really swallow it. So we used to say, what is that? It's later on that you see that I became a medical doctor and saw the importance of that. In different areas, the soil has different quality, there are different microorganisms, different pathogens, that is a different environment, things that strengthen your immune system in a different way. So people who are living where there is much mosquito, they might be like more resistant to some malaria strains and all that. So when you take that soil and eat, those pathogens that are in those soils, those microorganisms, they enter into your body and strengthen the immune system, because your body now reacts against them as foreign body and produces antibodies like soldiers for the future. When later on you have such attacks again, then you are more ready to fight them off. So there is much saying in that, in what my grandmother said, but it doesn't mean you will have to like just speak dirt somewhere and then eat it up. So it is about environmental ethics, that certain things have to be frowned upon, like just having like some swarms that stand around the house, which might be breeding grounds for mosquitoes, which in turn, will bring about malaria and other diseases, and catering for the pit toilets, so that flies don't move from here to there, and like not digging a pit toilet just next to the kitchen, and then not covering it up, and for flies to be carrying pathogens from here to there and making people sick. So those are basic hygiene principles that have to be followed. And when we bury our dead, I know some people want to be buried in their own around their own houses, but where people are buried, it has to be. We have to know that the type of soil. I mean, Dr. Bungwa can explain that better, and how deep someone is buried, and if there is a water bed running underneath, like there is a well next to where somebody is to be buried. So when later on, after decomposition, the drinking water might be affected, and people can get diseases from that. So those are things that have to be taken into account, and the government, the local authorities, have to enforce that and then make people aware that certain traditions have to be modified, and no, you can't do this because of this and that. So that would be the work of all those sanitary people and the hygiene instructors to see to it that people respect these rules, and that furthers environmental ethics. So we have to be careful with the saying, black man they die dirty, black man they die dirty, black man and white man they die dirty. So that's what I can say to that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Mungwa, do you have something to add to that particular adage from the village, black man they die dirty?
Ah, absolutely. I think, again, thank you, Dr. Ndula. I think as a medical doctor, um, you have witnessed a lot of what I mean, the damage that has caused our environment. I mean, that has led to illnesses in our communities as a result of not understanding the basics of sanitation and health, and the importance of clean water and even clean air. Um, that's very important. Um, People do not know how complex the issue of environmental ethics is, because there are certain things that we just do it and we feel that it is okay. I'll just take an example. Even the way people behave. Can you imagine that if you take a trash can and you put it somewhere, and you see people who come along, instead of putting the waste in the trash can, they throw it away. They don't care whether whatever they eat, they just let go and it falls where they are. That's an ethical issue. In some parts of the world, if you do that, you'll be fined. People have to
Mhm.
learn to take their dirt or their rubbish or their whatever to the nearest place where it will be picked up. And by so doing, they say many hands do light work. By so doing, our communities are clean. We have to learn to teach Ambazonians that the clean environment is the responsibility of everyone. It is not just the responsibility of the sanitary officer or somebody who's paid by government or by the local council or by the county. It is us. And you don't do it because somebody is watching you. You don't have to be policed to do it, or urinating or defecating anywhere. Is all part of this ethics that we have to know, that there are certain things that you don't do in public. We have had the privilege of living in other countries and we see how the people behave. And when you behave, if you are the outlier, people look at you as if you are uncivilized. We have to bring civility back to our culture. This is something that was there in the 60s. It was growing and people were more civil than what they are today. It is very important. You can also ask yourself, do this high number of accidents that we have on our streets, does it have an ethical issue? Is there an ethical responsibility for us to make sure that people do not die on our roads? The answer is yes. Okay? We know the causes of road accidents in Amazonia. When we take over our government, when we go back, we will make sure that ethics goes into into whatever we do that affect the community, that affects the population, because it is our responsibility. I will give you another example. When you go to the garage where they repair cars or motorcycles in Ambazonia, you discover that the oil that is taken out of the vehicle, do you know that this oil contains PCB? Do we know how to handle them properly? Do you know that the brakes in cars that were manufactured before 1978 contain asbestos? And this asbestos are tiny particles that fly in the air. And when you inhale it, you may have cancer. Do we know that? Do we know that some of the roofing sheets that we have on the flat roofs in Ambazonia may contain asbestos as well? like John's Manville, roofing sheets. Do you know there are certain materials that contain asbestos? Although asbestos was banned in 1979, we still have some residual materials that contain asbestos in the environment, like caulking on windows. You go to Sacred College, the windows are all caulked. That building, it was built before 1979. It contains asbestos and is a friable material, which means that you can crumble it and it would just turn into dust. You inhale it, you have a high probability of catching cancer. Do we know that? So there are a lot of things that we really have to do in order to harness environmental ethics. There's a lot of work to be done. It is not just the government, it's the population too. And it's only through education that we can make people understand the importance of ethics. Why is it that France did not want ethics in La République? Because they know that if they know ethics, they are done. They will never manipulate the government. You see, up to today, these are people who are always constantly manipulated for money. Take money to do this, take money to do that. That is the agent against ethical conduct.
Wow.
So we have to understand
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I think our time is soon coming to a stop. We are sorry we started a little bit late, and another program is coming up, and we must create time for that program. So we should not all be running late. But this has been, and this is a very, very educative program that I would have loved to ask a lot of questions because I discovered that when it comes to Africa, it's as if, lawlessness is ordained. And I wanted to find out from the two of you, immediately people cross over to the diaspora into the other countries, they become sane. They don't eat bananas and throw them out of the window of their car while they are driving on the streets. But back at home, it's very, very, very obvious. You, after squeezing your orange out of the orange fruit, you just throw the chaff on the streets. What is the major difference that makes these people when they cross the seas, and sometimes when they cross back to our African homes, they carry out the same unethical issues? What is the difference that makes them not to do that in overseas, and what makes them do it back in Africa? I think just two minutes for each of you will help us, and then we'll close for today. Meanwhile, as we continue, I'll have a lot of other questions. Dr. Tom, can you go ahead and then give us why it's happening like this before Doctor comes into run-up?
Yes, thank you, Pastor Komando. That's a very good question, and very, very, it's very accurate. One thing we have to know is all those laws that are here in white man country, as we say, they are those same laws that the colonialists handed down to us. I mean, and even if they did not hand it down to us, those are the same laws which govern human beings, which lead to a just, a more accountable, more equitable society, if they are followed. And not only if they are followed, but there has to be mechanisms to punish the perpetrators, those who violate such laws. And where we come from, being a part of La République, there is this culture of lawlessness, as you said, and survival of the fittest, and people ignore the law and get away with it because they can bribe their way out, and the consequences will not come upon them. But here in the diaspora, those consequences are there, and then you are stopped by a policeman on the highway, and you are on your phone while driving there, and then you have a ticket that and something you have to pay. If it's even something very, if you are like involved in an accident while having your phone in your hand and talking through it, then your driving license will instantly be taken away for some time. So those consequences are there. There is no way to say you want to bribe somebody. That's another crime. You will have much more punishment. So they are followed, and I think the thing is back home, the government and the authorities, they make it look like, oh, I've arrived, I'm here, and you people are there, so we are the ones having the say, and we can now dish it out onto you people. The people have to have that sense, that feeling of it is our government. We put you there to serve us, and we hold you accountable. And in order to do that, people have to know their civic responsibilities and their duties and their rights. So in Ambazonia, that's why we say from the Ethics Commission, know your rights by knowing the Constitution, what people are allowed to do and are not allowed to do, and the Code of Ethical Conduct. Then nobody can tell you anything, not even our revered president or whoever. Everybody respects the law, and that is what happens, I mean, more or less out here, more than in an La Republique controlled Ambazonia. But in an Ambazonia controlled by us, and business being done like it was 50, 60 years ago, that all that lawlessness will be something of the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. SOS, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for the contribution of Dr. Ndula. Let me just chip it in, turn it the other way around. Um, Obviously, when people come here and they have those attitudes, maybe they continue to do it, but they soon realize that they are an outlier. When you become an outlier, so oh my goodness, I'm the only one doing this. So just from social behavior, you change, and you go back home and you may come with the same attitude, but when you discover that again, you become an outlier because you want to do something that is so ethical. Everybody will say, oh, this man, a white man, what is this, so the pendulum swings in a different direction. So it's difficult to actually pinpoint it, but let me put this scenario. The only way I think we are going to succeed is teaching by example. When people who are high in government do certain things that show their humility, it is when you do that, it will be easier for people to understand some of these basic attitudes of doing things. Let me give you an example. If you remember when the United States was attacked, 9/11, do you know where the president of the United States was? Do you remember? He was reading stories to kindergarten kids. Can you imagine the humility? Have you ever thought of beer in 40 years, even getting into a university to talk to them? Do you know the patriotism for a president to go down and talk to the ordinary person? What I'm trying to tell you is that the solution to Ambazonia is not always necessarily laws and penalties and so on. It's by doing certain things for people to say, oh, this is a president. I'm going to do everything to be positive. And we've seen that with Dr. Sako in some issues. When we will have a head of state who will go down to a homeless shelter or go to an orphanage and talk to them and read them a story and tell them some of the challenge that he has dealing with running the country on a daily basis. I can tell you that when that president says nobody should leave a piece of paper on the street, that street will be clean in a week. So it's not just about laws. We have to use our psychology. When you see a president going to officiate, let's say, the marriage of some person somewhere, just shows up, oh, you are getting married today. And he's there. They say he's the president. Now you are laughing, you see the impact. Or get
Yeah.
a letter from the president to all those who are newlywed in a certain year. They send them letters. All they do it behind the scene. These are some of the issues that governments do to demonstrate that they are with the people. It's not all about laws and everything. In as much as those laws are in place, they must be. But we must look at all the possible ways to influence our population for them to understand the importance of good administration, that everybody should obey the law. That's all I want to say to close this very important.
Thank you very much, doctors. Ambazonians, we should understand that we are getting back to the sanity of the 50s and the late 50s, where if you get down to Street 2 in Tico, you just go straight to
Let
house
me
number
tell you one
15.
final story, please. Let me tell you something.
Okay.
I think in 1998, 97, I was in Bamenda, and I met a gentleman called Dr. Ngumne. You must have heard about him. He's of blessed memory now. We instantly became friends, and one day he told me, "Let us go and visit somebody." It was about 9 p.m., and we got into this house, and when they turned up the lights, who was there? It was Jongu Foncha. I met Jongu Foncha. Can you imagine the emotions I felt? I greeted him, and the humility I saw in the man was as if he was telling me something. And today, whatever I do, I always have that image of Jongu Foncha in my mind. I didn't go through any protocol. I was not told I was going to meet with Jongu Foncha. How this gentleman decided that we're going to meet this man, I have no idea. In as much as a Form 2 student in Sacred College, Jongu Foncha used to come and talk to us. And but I was a young boy. I didn't know what he was talking about. He had been prime minister, so why he's now retired. But personally, as a university professor, when I met him, it gave me a different impact. The humility in him will stay with me for the rest of my days. This is the sort of thing I'm trying
Wow.
to tell people. That's what we have to do to Ambazonia. It's not like standing on the
Yeah.
pedestal to say you're a big man and everybody else is below you. We are the same people,
Yeah.
and we will abide by the same laws and regulations, and we'll treat each other with kindness. That's what I'm trying
I
to say.
just pray that,
But
yeah, just pray that that spirit from they used to call them ancestors now. I want to really say that that spirit from some of the ancestors that we saw, like Litumbe, like other people that have gone ahead of us, Abed Mukong and the rest, the humility, the Jongo Foncha, that should possess us in this generation. Because if it does, the plans that we are having for Ambazonia, the Western world will be so jealous that they will want to penetrate and they will not be able. I want to thank two of you for coming to this program and the input you have made talking about this environmental ethics and what is going to happen in Ambazonia in prospect. Believing that God will help and these lessons will go deep down. One of the things that normally happens, people call it punishment. I don't call it punishment, it's discipline. And if we will institute that disciplinary attitude where the people in government, like we talk and emphasize about the rule of the law that has no respect for any individual, if that individual doesn't respect, I am sure that Ambazonia is going to become a nation with a very big difference. And with that note, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all of you for being here today. And we really expect that at the other time that the program will be coming up, we shall endeavor to be on time so that we can exhaust a lot and then not encroach into another program. Now, Ambazonian people, don't go away. The horizon will be yours. in a few minutes ahead. God bless you and have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget, tomorrow is the 18th of March 2023, and there is a great Midland federal draft tomorrow. Now, Midland is going to be the patrons and the matrons. That is what we'll call the host. Meanwhile, the draft is for the federal government to execute and carry out what we are definitely doing to make sure that La Republic get out of our land. So we build these ethical values that they came in and destroyed with impunity. We want to tell them that even though some people were not born at that time, but some of us who happen to have had a glimpse of what was going on, even though we're in our infancy, the impact and the input in us is very high, and we are making sure that we'll continue with it. So don't forget, tomorrow join us in this federal draft, and we expect that God is going to do something as we put our hands to carry out something. Thank you very much once again, and see you when next we are on board for the ethics studio.
Thank you. See you in 2 weeks.